Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all keeping well. So today's video, we have made it. We have made it to King John. Now after this video, I'd love to know your opinions. Do you think that John deserves the reputation he's got as England's worst ever monarch? Or has he just been given a bad reputation and he was easily led? We'll soon find out. Let's find out more about King John. John is mostly known as England's worst ever monarch. He killed his nephew, or had him killed. He lost the Plantagenet Empire and he cruelly starved his enemies to death. The real King John was much more than the fictitious villain that he's often portrayed as in the Robin Hood legends, and the man who was forced to issue the Magna Carta. But is John really as bad as legend would have us believe? John, he had a violent temper which could explode at any moment. He's mean and he's snarky and snide, and John, he loves to make fun of people, especially those who can't fight back. John is a bully. John was born around Christmas 1166 or possibly 1167. There's some uncertainty because John was the youngest of 8 known children born to King Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine. And because John was the youngest, he's regarded as not being all that important. John was the 4th surviving son and he was never expected to become king. He was destined for a career with the church. John, though, he was the baby of the family and he was his father's favourite. Henry II was the most powerful ruler in Europe. He was the King of England, Duke of Normandy, and Count of Anjou, which were all by inheritance, and he was Duke of Aquitaine through his marriage to Eleanor. Henry's intention was to have his vast empire divided after his death, and he designated each of his 3 older sons as heirs to its different provinces. Henry, the younger king, would have England, Normandy and Anjou. Geoffrey would have Brittany through his marriage to Constance, and Richard would have Aquitaine. There was nothing left for John, which led to his nickname Lacklands. In 1173, King Henry II had tried to give 3 castles that were on Henry the Young King's lands to John, and this had started the rebellion against Henry, the rebellion known as the War Without Love. Henry the Young King abandoned his father and he went to his father-in-law's court, King Louis VII in France, seeking protection. The young Henry soon had his brothers Richard and Geoffrey following him, while John, who was only around 5 years old, remained in England. Henry II, he squished the revolt, he forgave his sons, and he had his wife Eleanor placed under house arrest for the remainder of his life. Back in 1171, Pope Adrian IV gave Henry the authority to invade Ireland and to bring the Irish church into conformity with Roman practice. Henry, he gained Ireland into his ever-growing empire, and in 1177 he awarded his new Irish territories to his youngest son, John, with the title Lord of Ireland. Henry, he was desperately trying to ensure all of his sons had land to rule. But in 1183, fate threw a curveball into Henry's well laid out plans. Henry the young king had rebelled again against his father, but he died of dysentery in June. Then 3 years later, in 1186, Geoffrey had died after a jousting accident. John had gone from Lacklands to being second from the English throne. In 1185, John was sent to Ireland aged 18 as the Lord of Ireland. John arrived in Waterford in the south of Ireland, and John, with his friends and followers, are waiting for the group of powerful Irish leaders to meet them. This really should be a serious political occasion, but to the young Prince John, it's a really good laugh. From the moment John stepped foot in Ireland, he displayed a self-assured arrogance towards his intended subjects. Gerald of Wales, who was Henry's royal clerk and also an historian, had understood the need for discretion in face-to-face dealings, and he reprimanded John for his treatment of the previously loyal Irish kings who'd come to render service to him. Gerald claimed that John and his companions were mocking the Irishman's outlandish dress and poked fun at their long beards, and John went as far as pulling on one of the men's beards. John, he felt invincible. He's the son of the King of England. He can do whatever he wants. And John, as I said before, he was snarky and mean. And from the moment John had stepped foot in Ireland, he's already turned everyone against him. But Gerald of Wales says it's because John was young, dumb, and full of bad advice. Now, Henry is trying to get John set up. If John got things right, Henry thinks that John can stay in Ireland, keep the peace between the lords and the locals and the troublesome English and Welsh settler lords. If John can do that, then Henry can get the Pope to confirm that Ireland is a full-blown kingdom, and John would get a crown. But unfortunately, John made a big mess of things, and now John has to try to force the Irish under his authority. Now, his father had sent him to Ireland with a ton of money to hire mercenaries and allies and to build castles. Henry had also sent heavily armoured knights, which would have been great under a more competent leader. But John has no fighting experience at all. He's not Richard. And the money, John was like a teenager using his dad's bank card. He flitters the money away, having a really good time with his friends. John's reputation could have recovered from his misadventures in Ireland, but it was John's behaviour in the years that followed that did all the damage. King Henry II died in 1189, leaving his eldest surviving son, Richard, to inherit the Plantagenet Empire in its entirety. Once crowned and coronated, Richard almost immediately went on crusade, and John, in his absence, John stirred up a lot of discontent in England, which I have covered in Richard the Lionheart's Part 3, which I will leave linked up somewhere for you to watch. Now, John conspired with the King of France, Philip Augustus, to attack and take Richard's lands on the continent. In 1189, John married Isabella of Gloucester, granddaughter of Robert of Gloucester, on the 29th of August. at Marlborough Castle in Wiltshire. John and Isabella were married for 10 years, but their marriage was neither happy or successful. They had no children together. In 1192, on his way home from the Holy Land, Richard was captured and held for ransom by Henry VI, the German emperor. And when John heard the news that Richard was imprisoned, he came out in open rebellion. He was telling everyone that Richard was dead and to openly attack the lands of an absent king and a crusader was despicable. And the chronicles at the time were seething. They condemned John as a light-minded youth. They branded John's alliance with Philip Augustus as a pact from hell. And as for for opposing his own brother, one writer has said that John had broken the laws of nature and became nature's enemy. Richard the Lionheart was freed from captivity in 1194 and he returned to England to crush John's rebellion. And Richard forgave him, and in a few years that followed, John recovered some of the lands that he gave away, but John's reputation was tarnished once more. In April 1199, Richard the Lionheart died unexpectedly, and a succession crisis was triggered. Richard had named his then 4-year-old nephew Arthur of Brittany as his successor before leaving for the Third Crusade, but on his deathbed, he named his little brother John as his successor. Richard had died with no legitimate children, and John was a possible candidate to replace Richard as king. But his nephew Arthur possibly had the stronger claim, has also because he was the son of John's older brother Geoffrey, who died in 1186, and because Geoffrey was older, if things would have worked the way Henry had wanted, then possibly Geoffrey, or it would have been Arthur. Arthur had the stronger claim. Anyway, the barons of England and Normandy favoured John, but in Brittany and Anjou they preferred the 12-year-old Arthur, who was also receiving the backing of the French King Philip Augustus. Now, after a military standoff which lasted for several months, Philip Augustus agreed to abandon Arthur and acknowledge John. But Philip wanted the recognition of his superior lordship for the continental lands and the payment of 20,000 marks in return. John was crowned king on the 27th of May 1199 in Westminster Abbey. Isabella was not crowned alongside him, which suggests that John was already looking for a way out to end the marriage. By the end of the year, John had obtained a divorce on the grounds of consanguinity, as both were a great-grandchild of Henry I. John, though he wanted to keep hold onto the substantial Gloucester lands that he had gained through his marriage to Isabella, so John detained Isabella in honourable confinement for the next 14 years. He clearly learned that one of his dad. So John seeks another marriage, and he set his sights on Isabella of Angoulême, Oh, I hope that's right. And Isabella was a distant relative of King Philip Augustus, and the marriage to Isabella would strengthen John's position in Aquitaine. But Isabella was already betrothed to a powerful lord named Hugh de Lusignan. But did John care? No, not one incy bit. Now, Isabella was a lot younger than John. At this stage, John was 34 years old. Isabella was 12. Now, 12 was the minimum age that the church would permit a marriage. But John, again, wasn't bothered. And he pinched Isabella right from under Hugh's nose. And that is where I'm going to end part 1. So you'll have to make sure that you subscribe so you know what happens in part 2, because I am going to cover so much more. John has only just started and he gets a lot, he becomes a very, very naughty boy. He's one of those villains that you just love to hate, and I have to admit I have loved doing the research on John. I am finding so much more about him. I'm not sure I'd want to meet him in real life, but anyway, but no, I have thoroughly enjoyed every single bit, and I really hope you have too. Let me know your comments below what you think of King John, whether he deserves the reputation he's got, or like I said, whether he's just easily led. Let me know. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos, because you've got to find out what happens with John. And give this video a big thumbs up and just like and share and do all the good stuff, because you're all bloody amazing. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Anyway, take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.